The death of Alexander the Great. Was it natural death or murder covered by his generals? June 10th, 323 BCE Babylon. The most powerful man in the ancient world lay dying in the palace that once belonged to the Persian kings he conquered. Alexander the Great, who had never lost a battle, who had carved out an empire stretching from Greece to India, was losing his final fight. But here's what nobody tells you. The circumstances of his death are so suspicious, so perfectly convenient for certain people that even 2,000 years later, historians can't agree on what really happened that night. The official story that doesn't add up according to the ancient sources. Alexander attended a banquet hosted by his friend Medius of Larissa. He drank heavily, not unusual for the Macedonian king who'd adopted the Persian custom of elaborate drinking parties. But what happened next would change history forever. Alexander developed a sudden fever. Within days, he couldn't speak. Within 2 weeks, he was dead. He was just 32 years old. The court historians wrote it down as natural causes. Fever, perhaps malaria, maybe typhoid, West Nile virus. The explanations sound reasonable enough, don't they? Except for one glaring problem. Alexander had survived everything. Arrows through the lung, a sword blow that cracked his skull, poison arrows, wounds that would have killed ordinary men. This was someone whose personal physician had followed him across 3 continents, keeping him alive. And now, suddenly, a fever? Follow the money and the power. Here's where it gets interesting. Let's talk about who benefited from Alexander's death. His empire was the largest the world had ever seen, but he'd made one catastrophic mistake. He had no clear heir. His wife Roxana was pregnant, but the child wasn't born yet. His half-brother was mentally disabled. When asked on his deathbed who should inherit his kingdom, Alexander allegedly whispered, "The strongest." Convenient, isn't it? Because within hours of his death, his generals were already circling like sharks. Ptolemy would take Egypt. Seleucus would seize Persia. Antigonus would claim Asia Minor. Cassander would return to Macedonia. These men, who'd sworn loyalty to Alexander, carved up his empire like a feast before his body was even cold. The wars of the Diadochi, the wars of the successors, would rage for 40 years, soaking the ancient world in blood. But here's the question nobody wanted to ask. Did they wait for Alexander to die? Or did they help him along? The poison theory. A conspiracy fit for a thriller. 6 years after Alexander's death, his mother Olympias made a shocking accusation. She claimed her son had been poisoned, and she pointed her finger directly at Antipater, Alexander's regent in Macedonia, and his sons. One of those sons, Iolaus, had been Alexander's personal cupbearer, the man who served him wine at that fatal banquet. Think about the timing. Antipater had every reason to want Alexander dead. The king had been planning to replace him, and rumors were already spreading that Antipater was ruling Macedonia too independently, too much like a king himself. Alexander had even summoned him to Babylon, a summons that often preceded an execution. Antipater sent his son Cassander instead. And Cassander arrived in Babylon just weeks before Alexander fell ill. Ancient sources describe a poison so deadly it couldn't be transported in any normal container. It was allegedly collected in the hoof of a mule, carried across the empire by Cassander himself, and administered by his brother Iolaus. The symptoms match: the gradual paralysis, the excruciating abdominal pain, the final inability to speak while the mind remained aware. Alexander might have been conscious, trapped in his own body as he died. The medical evidence. Modern science weighs in. Fast forward to 2018. Dr. Catherine Hall, a toxicologist from New Zealand, proposed a theory that sent shockwaves through the historical community. She suggested Alexander might have been poisoned with Veratrum album-white hellebore, a plant well known to ancient Greeks. The symptoms match perfectly: the prolonged illness, the gradual paralysis, the fact that Alexander's body allegedly didn't decompose for 6 days after his death. But here's the chilling part. If he'd been poisoned with hellebore, Alexander might not have been dead when they prepared his body for burial. He might have been paralyzed, appearing dead while still conscious. Imagine the horror. The greatest conqueror in history, aware but unable to move, as his generals divided his empire around his living corpse. Other researchers have suggested strychnine from the Strychnus nux vomica plant, which was available in India, a region Alexander had just conquered. The symptoms? Convulsions, breathing difficulties, and a characteristic episthenes, a rigid body arched backward. Ancient sources describe Alexander suffering exactly these symptoms. The cover-up. Why, we'll never know for sure. Here's where the conspiracy deepens. The royal diaries, the daily records of Alexander's court, conveniently survive only in fragments. Most of what we know comes from sources written generations later. The original witnesses, they all had something to gain from the official story. Ptolemy, who wrote one of the primary sources, became pharaoh of Egypt. He had every reason to avoid accusations of poisoning, especially since he was one of Alexander's closest companions who stood to inherit part of the empire. Aristobulus, another source, was a military engineer who served under the generals. Would he really accuse his employers of murder? And then there's the most damning evidence of all, the speed at which Alexander fragmented. No investigation, no trial, no public inquiry into whether the king had been murdered. Just a scramble for power so immediate, so coordinated, it almost suggests these men had been planning their moves long before Alexander took his last breath. The natural death defense, to be fair, ancient epidemiology offers plenty of plausible explanations. Babylon's swamps bred mosquitoes carrying malaria and West Nile virus. Alexander had been campaigning for over a decade, his body bearing the scars of countless wounds. His heavy drinking was legendary, sometimes lasting days. The stress of commanding an empire, the tropical diseases, the chronic battle injuries, any combination could have killed him. Typhoid fever matches many of his symptoms. The high fever, the abdominal pain, the gradual decline. So does perforated bowel from his old battle wounds. Modern doctors examining the ancient sources suggest these mundane explanations are far more likely than elaborate poisoning conspiracies. But mundane doesn't explain the extraordinary coincidences, does it? The verdict history can't deliver, so what really happened in that palace in Babylon? Was Alexander the Great murdered by the men he trusted most, their conspiracy hidden under the fog of ancient history? Or did the mightiest warrior the world had ever known simply fall victim to the microscopic enemies that have killed countless? Conquerors, disease, infection, the simple fragility of human life, the truth is, we may never know. The evidence has been buried for over 2,000 years, scattered across crumbling manuscripts and lost documents. But the questions remain, haunting and urgent. Because whether Alexander was murdered or died naturally, one thing is certain. His death at 32 changed the course of human history. The empire he built died with him, fragmenting into warring kingdoms. The age of Hellenistic civilization began not with his conquests, but with his mysterious end. Perhaps that's the greatest mystery of all, how one man, yes, death natural or not, could reshape the ancient world. If you're hungry for more historical mysteries and want to dive deeper into the conspiracies that shaped our world, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment below. Do you think Alexander was murdered, or did fever claim the unconquerable? Let's solve history's greatest mysteries together, one video at a time.